2019 to order.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Welcome everybody. Thank you for being here tonight. I'd like to go ahead and get a motion for the approval of tonight's agenda, please.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion's carried. We do not have any presentations tonight. Consent agenda. All items on the consent agenda are considered routine and have been made available to the City Council at least 2 days in advance of the meeting. The items being acted in one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a council member or citizen so requests, in which event the item will be removed from the agenda and considered in normal sequence. We have nothing that has been indicated to be pulled from tonight's agenda. So tonight's agenda consists of 5A, which is the City Council minutes for July 22nd, 2019, resolution approving disbursements through August 12th, 2019, temporary liquor license for Angels Amongst Us. Can I get a motion to go ahead and approve tonight's agenda, consent agenda, please?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion is carried. Public comment provides an opportunity for the public to address the council on items that are not on the agenda. Comments will be limited to 5 minutes per person. Persons wishing to make a comment must sign up in advance of the meeting on the sheet provided and identify themselves by providing a name and an address. Director Lawrence, do we have anybody sign up for tonight's public comment? Is there anybody from the audience that would like to address the City Council tonight? Seeing none, I'll go ahead and take a motion to go ahead and close public comment.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Public comment is now closed. We do not have any public hearings scheduled for tonight, so we're going to move on to our regular agenda. First item on our regular agenda is 8 Alpha, which is the Community Center Business Memberships. City Administrator Kruger.
Mayor Hague, members of City Council, I apologize, the PC is updating right now, so you don't have any visual aids here, but this is pretty straightforward anyway. But what we're looking at here is adding to our membership structure at the community center and starting to dive into some business partnerships with businesses within the city limits of Sueur. So what that means is that this would be available to anybody, any business that's within the city limits of Sueur. The idea behind that is that those businesses are probably paying property taxes and contributing to the overall budget of the community center. So this package, as you can see, will be a pretty good deal or a pretty good discount because of that. So I'll just start going through what we're looking at as far as the business memberships go. Basically, the businesses we would work with businesses like LSI or Agripeer or Cambria and see if they are interested in enrolling in. The whole program would be run through their HR or payroll department. So what we would do, or what they would do, is they would offer this to their employees. It would be a full access membership, either a single or a family membership. The employee could choose, and they would run it through their payroll. Then on the city side, what would happen is we would then invoice that business one invoice every month, or however they would like to get billed. So at a minimum once a month. If they wanted to do quarterly or biannually, we could do that as well. But what we're looking at is and there's no limit to the number of people. So you could have a business with 3 people in it. You could be eligible for this program. We didn't want to make it only for large businesses in town. We wanted to open it up for all businesses in town. So that was one of the goals. But what this would be is a 15% discount from what a full access membership would be at that annual rate. So pretty good deal. It ended up being about $17, a little bit over $17 a month per person that would sign up for this. So it falls underneath that $20 a month insurance reimbursement. So if somebody goes to the gym enough, this could potentially pay for itself for them. There are some additional benefits that the employees would receive from these groups if they would sign up. They would get a 10% discount on all services. That means programming, so rec programming, personal training, those types of things. The Wellbeats group sessions, they could reserve those for the business group at any time for no charge. You'd have 2 hours of group equipment orientation, so you'd be able to sit down with one of our personal trainers, go through the equipment in a large group setting and figure that out. And then, you'd always have 24-hour access to the fitness center, and then pre and post fitness testing, so strength and weight testing. We develop a program, or we have a program that we could put information in. We have a pilot program currently going on with LSI with some of their employee rehabilitations that they have going on, and it's a partnership between the physical therapist, a nutritionist, and a personal trainer at the city. So we're trying this in a small group setting. That's different than what this is. That's more of somebody gets injured on the workplace, and now there's this program that the city's involved with regarding trying to get that person back into the workplace. So a little bit different here. We hope that we can get the businesses involved, because there will be a little bit of time investment from them to roll something like this out. Their HR, their benefits program, and their payroll law to coordinate to get this to work. But benefits, there's a large wellness movement within the workforce. It's try to keep your employees as healthy as they can, and they can be there working more frequently. Then they can also cut down on some of your group. If you have a group policy for health insurance, you can cut down on some of those costs as well. So we think that we can get some businesses, especially if we don't limit the size of them, to enroll in this. The idea, if City Council so approves this, is that we would roll this out as soon as we can to try and gauge some interest from some of the groups. And we would likely reach out to our big 3 businesses in town and just start talking with them, because that's probably the biggest bang for our buck. But developing some marketing materials, making sure that other businesses in town know that it's available and they can sign up for it. So that's the basics of the actual program itself. So you'll see a series of these things, kind of these membership type ideas, these changes to drive memberships and try to get more memberships at the community center. I think when we saw the update that we had from Allison and Rich earlier this summer, there's been some new people that have started coming to the community center. So this is another way to tap into a market that I think is pretty large. We have a large workforce in Sueur that maybe doesn't have access to the facility right now. So it'd be a way to try and get people to go there, test it out, and have it be tied into wellness with your employer. So with that, I'll entertain any questions. What we're looking for is this direction. If there's anything that council would like to change with the program, if we think it's a completely bad idea, we can scrap it. But really feedback on it, and if you feel comfortable after you give that feedback, or if there's more information, we can always bring this back to council. But what we're looking for, if you're comfortable with it, is a motion just authorizing staff to market this and move forward with these terms.
I've got 3 questions actually, City Administrator approval. The first question is, what exactly is Wellbeats?
So, Wellbeats, if you've been at the community center, it's in the Merrick Room. It's the 90-inch monitor that we have up there. You can do fitness on demand type activities. We have some spin bikes that you can use, and you can basically, you have a touchpad. You can tell it what you want to do, and it has an instructor on a big screen that walks you through a fitness routine. So it's pretty neat. People can go in there, and one person can go in and do a routine by themselves with an instructor on the screen, or you can bring in a big group of people and do it. It's pretty neat.
Okay. My second question is, I understand how we're going to go after our larger businesses in town, but do we have a plan to go ahead and send out a mailer to each of our smaller businesses to bring awareness to them as well?
I don't know if we would send out a mailer. What we would likely do is reach out to like our chamber and be able to say, here's something that your businesses in town have access to if they choose to. We can look at it. We have a community development director that has knows where a lot of these businesses are, but just some of the sheer quantity of them. There's a lot of businesses in town, large and small, that are out there, and through some of the Rev program stuff that has been happening, we've gotten a good list of those, so we have a good idea. But we hope that the chamber would be able to help tap into that market as well.
And my final question would be, based off conversations that staff has had regarding this program, do we have any idea how many new potential customers it may draw?
We don't know. I mean, we have quite a workforce in town that probably isn't tapped into this, the community center network right now. So, it could easily, double what we have right now. If there's buy-in from the businesses in town, it could easily double what we have as far as memberships go.
Anybody else on city council? Councilmember Sullivan.
So I want to piggyback on Mayor Hagg's statement on the advertising or promoting this. I think it's important to hit the businesses that we know of and get that information out to them, because I like to think that the chamber can relay that information, but I think it's good coming from us as well. So that's one point. My second one, for the businesses in town where their employees currently are members, how are we going to roll them into a business membership? What's the plan there?
Could you repeat that?
So if you have a business that is 5 people and they're currently members, how do you roll them into a business membership? What happens to their current membership?
They would just be able to roll into that business membership if it saves them some money.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely.
I have a question.
Councilmember Krogman,
You
please.
it says here this would be a 1-year annual membership calendar year. You're gonna wait until next January 1 to roll it out, or will you prorate it for this year? What will you do?
It'd be prorated for this year, so we can roll it out right away. We debated this, if we wanted to roll it out right away on January 1st or wait till January 1st. Internally, we said we should really start just marketing it. It might take 3 months to get everybody on board. So we just want, if somebody wants to enroll in it right away, we can do it, and we'll prorate it based on what months are available.
My understanding would be that the business would be committed to each membership for the duration. For example, if they started now, it would be through December 31st. If they renew on January 1st, they're committed through the whole year. It's not really a month to month, they're committing for a year.
Correct, and that's part of the reason why we feel we can give that discount, is because we locked that in for a full year. You don't get the people that would maybe just do it in the winter, 3 months in the winter, 6 months in the winter. You lock them in, and they guarantee that no matter what, they're going to pay that invoice for that many people.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
I think anytime we create any kind of incentives for our community center and for the businesses in town, I think it's a good idea. I like it, so.
To Councilmember Sullivan's point about the chamber, we do have businesses that are not affiliated with the chamber for whatever the reason, so we certainly want to, maybe if nothing else, compare our lists and reach out to those businesses that are not affiliated with the chamber.
Yeah, and we'll use our social media tools and website tools to get the information out. We hope word of mouth gets out there to some of the smaller business community members out there. We have a council member that has a smaller business here in town, and thinking about that, maybe 7 to 10 employee group. There's quite a few of those, and that's a big demographic within the community that I think we can't overlook.
Does anybody else have anything? I'll entertain a motion then for City Council to approve the business membership packages as outlined in this memo, effective immediately.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any final discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion is carried. We now move on to line item 8 Bravo, which is the Community Center Emergency Services Membership. City Administrator approval.
Mayor Hague, members of City Council, again, this is another way to drive memberships. We've had, in particular, the Henderson Fire Department reach out to the city of Sueur to see if there were any special packages for emergency personnel. This kind of drove the conversation to say, well, let's think about this holistically and not just adapt to it just piece by piece. So what we've come up with, or what staff has come up with, is basically allowing a 10% discount for full access memberships, single family or senior, for emergency management personnel. So this would be anybody, a firefighter, a law enforcement officer, or a paramedic, something like that. I don't know if there's a group that we're missing, or, you know, we would use our discretion if they're part of the emergency personnel community, that we would allow them to sign up for this. What we would look at is getting groups like fire departments and emergency management technicians, is that right? Medical technicians. Getting those groups in the area to see once if our community center is a good fit for them, and give them the ability to access the facility at a discount. So again, another way that we're trying to drum up some additional memberships. We have had a neighboring community reach out about this, so it kind of posed the question, and we discussed it internally. We think that this is a fair discount for this type of program. Again, we're looking for feedback from City Council on if this is something that we want to change, modify, get rid of altogether. And if City Council feels comfortable with this, then we're looking for a motion to approve and implement immediately. And if there's somebody out there, I know we have some local emergency management personnel that are members at the community center. If this gets implemented, we could roll their current membership, whatever they have, into one of these memberships. One thing to keep in mind: this is only for full access. So if somebody would have a, say, fitness center only membership and they wanted to roll into this, it might be a little bit more expensive, but our staff would be able to explain that to them pretty clearly. So I'll entertain any questions from City Council on this proposed membership addition to our packages, and go from there.
Jasper, how about retired emergency service people and firemen, policemen?
Trying to think, I can't remember if we have a senior package, so it looks, I mean, that'd be some clarity that we could talk about tonight, is to figure out if we have retired EMT or emergency service personnel, if you want to add them to this list, or if the discount that they would get for, I mean, maybe they're retired but not senior as well. So it's something that we could talk about. We find, I think it'd be fine to add to the list. The only thing is verifying and validating that they were retired, and, you know, do we think about good standing or not good standing, you know, those types of things. It muddies the water up a little bit.
I think it would make it extremely hard to track coming from the field. Once I leave service, there's no evidence that I ever was, other than if I had a previous card, but that doesn't tell you if I left on because I was forced out, or if I left because I retired on goodwill. So I personally think it'd be hard to track.
I would add, it's technically not, in many cases, a retirement, it's just they're no longer serving in that capacity. They may have only done it for 2 or 3 years, or even less. It strikes me it's a very difficult area to get into.
I would agree, and, you know, we can reevaluate it if there's situations where we have people coming up and saying, hey, I'm retired, I'm a retired EMT, you know, of 30 years of service, you know, can I get in on this deal? You know, something like that. We could then reevaluate or use our discretion. I don't know. I really would just want to reevaluate it at that time if we get a lot of requests.
If the council was to go ahead and approve this, what's the thought process in regards to how we would notify the surrounding communities to bring this to their attention?
We would use our standard tools, the social media, and, you know, we got the paper and you know, our website, those basic ones. We wouldn't actively market or send out marketing material to you know, neighboring fire departments, things like that. We would just allow it to kind of organically grow.
Anybody else have any questions?
Do we offer now any type of discount for veterans? I know you two could speak to this, that a lot of services where you go, they offer some type of veteran discount. I didn't know if the community center did that at all.
Yeah, we do. It's a 15% discount.
So we already got that.
We do,
Okay.
yep.
Yeah. That might have been, I think, maybe the meeting that you missed because of previous commitment or something of that
Okay.
nature. But yeah, that was brought up by one of our citizens, and we unanimously approved that. So, but yeah, thanks for bringing that up. Anybody else have anything else to bring
I would just ask that if, since the city of Henderson, or Henderson Fire, I should say, reached out, that we at least notify them that we did move forward with something if we pass it tonight.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, I'll go ahead and entertain a motion then for city council to approve the emergency services personnel membership packages as outlined in this memo effective immediately.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any final discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion is carried. We now move on to item 8, Charlie, the 2019 second quarter financial report. Director Dowd, how are you this evening, sir?
Very well, how are you, Mayor?
Good.
Thank you, Mayor, members of City Council, for allowing me to speak tonight. I'm going to go over the quarter 2 report. If you have any questions, please stop me so we can go over those, because if you have a question, I'm sure someone else does as well. Per a request from Jasper, I was told to make the current year a little more obvious so you can see those, so that's why the large purple dots are there now, so it's a little easier to track. To see where we are currently versus where we were in past years. Nothing much has changed from quarter 2 or quarter 1 to quarter 2. We're still in the same track. We're within $125,000 of where we've been over the 4-year period. So nothing has changed drastically in the general fund, whether up or down. It shows a lot of stability within the fund. It shows that we are on the same track we were in quarter 1, which makes me very happy and everyone else very happy most of the time. But it looks like we're doing just fine. We had a little lower point in May, and then we received our settlement in June. What happened is we received it on May 31st in 2017, so that's why the orange number is so much higher than everyone else has received it one day before. So we received it on May 30th and 31st instead of the 1st or 2nd of June, which is about the timing of the settlement. It shows up in the graph as being kind of an anomaly in that 2017 year. So 1 or 2 days makes a huge difference on the graph. But otherwise, we were at the same track we were before, and I am confident that the general fund will be in the same spot hopefully in quarter 3. Overall income statement for the general fund, pretty boring, only 4 really explanations that need to be even brought up and stuff. The criteria for those explanations for myself are between 80 and 120% of the budget. If you're between there, it means we're close enough to the budget that it's not normally a huge difference. Otherwise, it's got to be less than $15,000 for the general fund. So I do want to make sure all the explanations are done. And that 80 to 120% is based on where we're at during the year. So if we're halfway through the year, we should be 50% through our budget. So as long as we're between 80 and 120, it's normally close enough for it. It's not like it's a huge anomaly. So the main explanations are that we only received a small portion of our LGA, which is earlier than we normally receive that. So normally it's just a $0 amount, not $142,000, which is on the intergovernmental line in revenues, number 1. The reason for that is Jasper and I looked it up and wondered why we got that. So in the bill this year, they approved a 14.6% disbursement in June on the bill when they did LGA. Do I know why? No, but they did. So instead of getting 50% in July and 50% in December, which is typical, they did 14.6% in June, and then 35.4% in July. So I don't know why they did that, but maybe it's cash flow issues for some of the smaller cities, so they get a little earlier disbursement from LGA. Never seen it happen before, so it's a new one for me. Other than that, number 2 is the big one on expenditures and accounting. Accounting is not a very large budget for us, it's only $62,000 a year, so when we're over budget on that, it really shows up quite a bit. Those are paying AEM Financial Solutions for 6 months, which we're not budgeted for. It's about $20,000, so that's a majority of that difference of $32,000 from where we should be during the year. The other difference is that we do pay the audit 1 time a year, so it does come in the first half of the year, and then we have those dollars budgeted for the rest of the year. So it will slowly start to even out throughout the rest of the year. Those unbudgeted dollars, however, will show up every time, so most likely that will be an explanation for the rest of the year, is that those unbudgeted dollars were there paying AEM Financial Solutions for the 6 months at $20,000, so expect that one to be there for the rest of the year. I'm confident that in another area of the general fund we will be under budget, which is currently where we are on number 3, sorry. We just haven't spent as much money in unallocated expenditures that we thought we would. So, and we have, some projects coming up as well, and we've been really utilizing that CIP CEP fund for projects instead of using those unallocated expenditures, which is what happened before. So with those under expenditures there, I'm confident the accounting one will be made up with those other expenditures that are under budget. Otherwise, any questions on general fund overall income statement's pretty boring, but that's always a good thing in my terms. Next one, I'll leave the screen up there so everyone can see the cash balances by fund, and then I'll kind of go through some larger explanations if we have any. The big one that really shows up is probably number 3, which is the revolving loan fund and the revolving loan fund state. There's about a $400 and some thousand difference in both of those funds. Again, that is the one-time payment we made back to the state to release the deed restrictions on those dollars. So because the state matched our RLF fund to begin with, to start the RLF fund or the revolving loan fund, we had restrictions on where we could use those dollars for. Sam, our community development director, noticed that deed was able to, or had a one-time payback of those dollars, that we would remove those restrictions and be able to use those for whatever the city decided they needed. So it was a one-time thing, and the council decided, and the EDA decided that was a good idea, which I agree with 100%. So no more restrictions on those, so that's why it's all in one fund, and the differences are pretty much offset from each other. Otherwise, a lot of restructuring happened in 2018. The number, I think it's 2, the equipment acquisition fund, payment management plan, sidewalk reconstruction fund, all of those funds who created the CIP, CEP stuff. We did it in 2018, and it's been going very well. 2019 was the first year we had the full, CIP, CEP implementation, and then 2020 we're moving forward with that as well. So it's been a good process for overall the city, and I think it will be good moving forward as well. Other than that, the number 8 payment in, I believe that is in the sewer fund. Yep, so $270,000 decrease in the sewer fund. We do look at that fund very heavily because that is our lowest performing fund over the past few years, so we always look at that one very heavily. And why it decreased was because of a one-time payment that we made for some land next to Murph-Buck, and then Murph-Buck reimbursed us during the second quarter of 2019. So it is a pass-through dollars, but that decrease does show up quite a bit, and why it over year it looks drastically different. So they did reimburse us for those dollars. Anything else that showed up there? Those are my main points that I had, main changes overall, but I'm happy to answer any questions on any other funds you may have. All right, moving on. So pages in mine, 5 and 6 in the quarterly report, those are just breakdowns of where the dollars are at. I didn't include those on the graph because they're just more of a breakdown for the city council to understand where our money is being held at. The water fund is the next one. Water fund's even more eventful than the general fund. We only had one major thing to note, which was salaries and benefits. So during the budget process, we always do a percentage allocation for employees to figure out where we think they're going to be at, and where I think they're going to be working at with our wastewater and water department specifically, because those are the ones that are allocated out. Otherwise, we have public works and such that are made up different percentages in different areas. But based on what we thought we were at, we have spent less time with employees in the water fund, just based on what we've needed in the city. So with those time spent there, means that the wastewater fund will have to pick up that other account because that is where they spend their time at. With the lower time spent, which means less expenditures for us, we're looking at about a $495,000 increase in fund balance, or increase in overall revenues for that water fund alone. So that is showing very highly on the graph. Again, we changed the graph this year, so just to go over the graph again with you. The 3 bars on the bottom are broken down by different types of expenditures we have. The reason why I did that is because current expenditures are the ones we've actually paid for. Bond principal are the ones that I want to note so that you guys know how much bond payments we make. But we also need to make sure we cover those because those are actual physical payments. And then the blue line, or the blue bar, at least on this one, is depreciation. So if we don't cover depreciation, it's not going to hurt us in our pocketbook. It's just going to hurt us in the long run when we don't have enough money to redo things that we have in the ground, or we need new water towers or whatever else we may need. So we're not able to basically pay for those new assets at the time we need them. So that's why it's a good number to know, although it's not gonna hurt us on our pocketbook, it is gonna hurt us in the long term if we don't have enough money for those. So, as you can see, that water fund is doing extremely well. We did increase, rates in 2019, so that is helping out that fund greatly. And, there's expenditures that are on the CIP CEP fund that will cut down those dollars in future. So it is not just we're just stockpiling money. It's definitely, we're planning for the future so we don't have to bond for those payments, which is a great thing. And that's the first time the city's ever done that in years. So that's been a great process.
City Administrator Krugel.
I was just gonna mention what Zach alluded to. We do have $4.5 million in capital projects over the next 4 years now that have been identified. So by design, we've raised rates to help make those payments or lessen that bonded debt that we're gonna need to take out to actually do those projects. We're in the middle of doing this water supply study and comprehensive water plan. You maybe seen some people out doing some things with hydrants and testing flow rates and things like that. We'll get a good idea of what we need to do as far as projects go. We know we need to increase our water treatment facility that we have right now. We know we need to replace a water tower, and we know we need another well. Above and beyond that, we'll get some good input and direction from this group. You maybe when we presented on this before, there was the one program that was supposed to be a 10-year CIP CEP type thing for the water department. We really didn't get started on that until year 7. So this will kind of take a comprehensive look at everything and give us some good guidance. So it's good that we have this fund balance acquiring or accumulating here, but we will have some pretty hefty expenditures in the near future.
Correct.
I wanted to just bring it up regarding the salaries and benefits. That includes the management's time and benefits that are being allocated to those specific income areas such as water, wastewater, and electricity. Is that correct?
Correct, yeah. So any salaried employee, which basically is our directors and some managers, are set to a certain allocation every time. So as a salaried employee, you get the same paycheck and that same percentage goes to those funds every time. So the changes has to do with where the hourly employees are, actual people physically doing the work, are actually spending time on that. Yes, you're welcome.
Anybody else have anything?
Okay, moving on to the next one, sewer fund. Sewer fund, I wish I could give you great news on the sewer fund, but it's basically the same point we were at last year and we've been at in a few years. I've pinpointed some information I'd like to share, but not, it's not going to be news that no one's ever heard before. So some of the big things that hurt sewer, with water increasing and we have increased revenues, it mostly has to do with the rate increase. We did have a wet, cooler spring in the state of Minnesota, so we didn't use as much water. Sewer revenue is based on water, so even when we don't use as much water, and that has to do basically with residents and new residents. As Agripure is our largest water consumer, so they're paying their water bill and fine and dandy, but they are part of MRVPUC and have all their sewer revenues go to MRVPUC and cover their costs in that. So they are a partner in MRVPUC. So their sewer dollars do not go to the city of LeSueur, those go to MRVPUC. So our biggest water consumer, which consumes over 50% of our water in the town, does not pay any sewer charges. So that is what's hurting this fund greatly, which is the information I wanted everyone to know tonight, is that's what hurts this fund a lot, and we'd have to do a lot of research on to figure out how we need to get this fund back to normal. Again, we were, go ahead. I'll answer your question first.
Just a point of clarification, they still pay sewer, they just pay directly to MRVPUC. Correct, Jasper?
That is correct, yeah. The city itself doesn't receive any revenues, but MRVPUC does. They're a partner.
Correct.
Yep.
Thank you.
Correct, yeah. So they do pay, just that doesn't go to us. So that's the big things. Number one, obviously, is just the charges for services are down. Number two is that's where the revenue went in for the piece of land that we got back in. So it went out in 2018 and then came in 2019 when MRVPUC reimbursed us for that land. Number three is supplies. So based on supplies, we upgraded the server in the sewer department. And no such project was completed in 2018, so that's why it's so much larger, which is the second line in the expenditures line, the white one. So much larger than it was in the previous year. Through the budget year so far, though, we are half the budget with where we expected to be. And it's noted that this sewer fund, we plan on having MRF-PUC dissolved at this point and having all of the expenditures from MRF-PUC incorporated in the city along with the revenues. So that should be something that is known as well, that we had intention when we did the budget to include MRF-PUC in all of these things. So it makes our expenditures much higher, and so is our revenues. So when we don't hit those numbers, it's not because we're not, doing well. It's just we had budgeted differently than we actually ended up for the year. So I don't know if City Administrator Kruger wants to expand on that.
Yeah, I can talk about that a little bit. So when you compare to what we adopted as the 2019 budget, it might not be the best actual way to look at it, because we have a lot more expenditures and a lot more revenue coming in. Really, it should be compared to 2018, if anything. There's a couple ways that we can approach this. We can either keep it in this sense, if we all understand that's what's going on. When we go through our 2019 audit, there will be questions asked about that, because our revenue marks are going to come in way low, our expenditure marks are going to come in way low. But overall, you should still be able to compare them year to year. We could go through the process, and as far back as I could look, I don't think we've ever done a budget amendment. So you can go through and do a budget amendment mid-year, do some adjusting and things like that if you would want. I probably wouldn't recommend that because it's not the norm for this community, but you could go through if you really wanted to make the books look really clean. We could do that, but I think as long as everybody feels comfortable with understanding that the budget that was adopted in 2018 for 2019 had a lot more expenditures and a lot more revenues in it compared to what we actually have. But if you compare the graph that you see in front of you, that's more reflective of what's going on than the actual budgeted amounts.
To be clear, we had the opportunity to explain this to the auditors, and the reason that you just stated is sufficient enough to go ahead and pass our audit, correct?
Yeah. I think these things happen. You might plan for something to happen, a land sale or something like that, and it doesn't happen. But then you adjust your revenues or your expenditures to match that throughout the year. This fund is always operated in the red, and it probably will for the life of the PFA loan that we have. Zach's done some modeling and ran some numbers as far as what that looks like after the PFA loan, and we should be in the black within 3 years after that. So it's a pretty quick turnaround. We're going to do everything we can to keep fighting this fight to try to get it into the black, but without raising rates more, we're going to be in the red probably for the remainder of the loan, unless we can do. We have a couple other ideas that we're going to propose to City Council in the near future, but other than that, this is more of the same.
And the remaining time on the PFA loan is how long?
8 years, I believe.
2027. So we have 8 years.
Councilmember Huntington, did you have something?
No.
Anybody?
Okay, I'll continue that. So just looking at the graph, let's go back quick for the graph. So again, the 3 bars are current expenditures, bond principal, and depreciation. We have never cleared bond principal in 4 years that I show here, and I went back a few years before that, and we still didn't clear it either at those years. So I'm glad we're doing current expenditures, but just be aware that it's going to be more of the same, just like City Administrator Kruger had mentioned, that don't expect it to be in the black anytime soon as long as we have the PFA loan. On to electric, which is a brighter subject. The electric fund is doing well. It's performing as what we expect it to be. Our electric fund is our largest revenue and also largest expenditure fund overall. We are served from MMPA, so whatever we basically buy from MMPA is what we bill out to customers. So our charges for services may be down, which is $193,000, which is number 1 on there. But if you flip to number 4, we are also lower in the expenditure line item, which is the third from the bottom on purchased power. So purchased less power this year, which means we've billed out less power. So it's not something of too much concern because we have paid $344,000 less, but we've earned only $193,000 less. So we're in the black overall if you look year over year. Jeff wanted me to add the kilowatt hours billed as of date, so that's the line item below the excess deficiency, like double line item down below. Is to show overall how many kilowatt hours have we billed as of today, compared to where we were last year. And then you can see we billed out about 5.3 million kilowatt hours less through the year of 2019 than we did 2018. I attribute that mostly to a wet, cooler spring. There's a cooler spring, you don't use AC as soon, and then you don't use as much power. Other than that, small little things are supplies. Number 3, we had to do some electrical transformer repairs this year, $10,000 more in 2018, than 2019. And then we had some equipment parts and stuff that we did in 2019 as well, so we did not have to do, or 2018, did not have to do this in 2019, my apologies. But the big item that sticks out is capital outlay, $234,000 more in 2019. We did purchase a boring machine in 2019. Take the fact, why am I saying that? 2018, I apologize for that. Nothing similar in 2019, so we did purchase that at a one-time purchase. We should not have purchased that for another 10 years, 15 years, is from what I understand. Those are a large item to purchase, so.
City Administrator Krugel.
Yeah, go ahead.
One thing I'll point out, and it's great news, is if you look at the blue line that's added to there, our sales are actually above our depreciation numbers for the mid-year, which is good. We're generally not capturing enough revenue to cover depreciation. We are now, which is good because there are some capital costs in the near future for electric that the main substation has some transformer work that needs to happen, and these things aren't cheap. We're talking $1 million projects to do some maintenance on these things. So the good thing is that 2019 is trending very good to possibly be able to use fund balance to do that. If you remember last year, we were consciously not charging enough for our summer demand rates. This year we are, and next year we're going to add whatever kind of increase we want on that to make sure we're covering our costs. So that's one thing as far as what we've done that's changed these. But it's good that our sales are above our depreciated amount because we do have some expenditures in the future coming up.
Correct. That fund has very little bond principal payments left, and we do pay very minimal per year for bond principal, so they'll be basically debt-free in 2020, 2021. So not too far off, and they'll be debt-free at least for now, unless we have any major expenditures, and hopefully with those sales we can avoid those things. So. Community center. Touching base on this one quickly. Since there isn't a whole lot to discuss, but the main thing is repair and maintenance in the community center. This year we had one water main break in the community center, which we had to repair. Going to be about $17,000. We did not have anything like that in 2018, which is our only thing that really stuck out to me during the process. The community center fund has been a tough fund to understand as well, with memberships and so on and so forth, which is discussed tonight. I'm hoping the business area of the memberships will really help out this community center fund overall. But we're not too far underneath, about $50,000 or about $100,000 underneath revenues over expenditures. I'm hoping that those continue to. We're about $100,000 or so maybe at the end, but I'm hoping that the business memberships help us out a lot, and this fund is about halfway through, and there's nothing major that changes either side. So we're looking at about the same for the second half, unless something drastically changes. I'm hoping on no more repairs or whatever else, but this fund doesn't have any debt and only has expenditures and revenues. So we've received our first half tax settlement, which is already in those numbers. Should be pretty similar for the second half of the year, unless something drastically happens.
When you say that there's no debt for the community center, does that include the Johnson Controls?
It doesn't. So the community center itself does not, or I should say, the community center, it's a separate fund.
Okay.
So the community center does pay for it. That's your transfer out every year, $174,000 transfer out. So the money goes into the community center and then transfers out, because the Johnson Controls loan is a loan that, or the revenue bond is the one that the roof project that we did in the community center a few years ago, 2014 project. The Johnson Controls one goes into a different fund. So it doesn't flow through this community center one. This is just Fund 615. This is just operations. And then the 2014 community center project we did in bond. We did. I will stand for any other questions, otherwise that is the Q2 report. Hopefully pretty uneventful, but still good information, and hopefully Q3 is the same way.
Anybody have any questions for Director Dowd? That said, I'll entertain a motion to receive the 2019 second quarter financial report for the city of Sueur.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any final discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion is carried.
Thank you, Mayor.
Fantastic work, Director Dowd. Thank you so much. You've made it very simple for us to all understand now. We've come a long ways over the last few years.
Yes, been great, thank you.
Thank you. Next item on the docket is 8 Delta, which is the zoning code update, first reading. City Administrator Kruger.
Mayor and members of the city council. This is the second time that this has been brought to city council. The first one was kind of just a heads up, here's this large document that we want you to look at. The planning commission has recommended for approval, but it's a large document, so there's a couple weeks here that you've had the document to look at it. Tonight what we're proposing, and Community Development Director DiMaggio will give an update on kind of the hot topic areas, the big change areas. Councilmember Krogman has asked some questions that I think we can address tonight. But really what we're looking for is conducting the first reading tonight and then doing the second reading on the 26th of August, where we'll have a formal ordinance. That ordinance will be published, and we'll be able to have people come in and look at it and things like that, look at the actual zoning code if they choose to, once we get it into more of a final place. So with that, I'll turn it over to Ms. DiMaggio.
Director DiMaggio, welcome.
Good evening, Mayor Hague, members of the council. The last time I was here with you, we kind of talked a little bit about why we're updating our zoning code, and tonight, since I had the opportunity to speak with all of you again, I thought we'd go over some of the hot topics of the zoning code update. So on the screen right now, you're going to see what our current zoning code, what our land use looks like, and what our proposed land use looks like. So we're actually going to be changing up some of our land use districts, and so I wanted to go through a couple of them with you just to understand the change a little bit more. This is a breakdown of all of the areas. So currently we have a rural residential district. Going forward, we'll have a rural residential and an urban reserve district. So an urban reserve district, a way to classify that would be something that isn't served by water or sewer. So if you notice something is in the UR district, it's because they currently don't have water or sewer. We have low density residential, we will continue to have that. Low density urban residential will now be called single family residential. Medium density urban residential and our manufactured home area, those were previously R3 and R5, are being combined into R3. So we're going to go over what that means. It sounds just almost like a lot of crazy talk, but it will make sense, I think, as we move forward. We'll continue to have multifamily residential. In the future, we'll call it high density residential. That would be an area for apartments, things like that. We'll continue to have our central business district. That is our core downtown. Previously, we had a fringe commercial district, which was just an area around the downtown. We will continue to have that, but we're now going to call it a downtown mixed-use district. It just is a better term and makes a little bit more sense because in some of those areas there is housing along with businesses. And when you look at a fringe commercial, you think it is just a business district, and really in our town, it's not. The commercial light industrial zone is being split into two new districts, a general business and a light industrial, and our general industry will remain general industrial. In the past, we had a floodplain and a transitional district. Going forward, we'll continue with our floodplain. The transitional district, going forward, when we have an area like that that is maybe being annexed in, it will now go as urban reserve until it has water and sewer, which typically makes sense. If we're annexing in a property, they wouldn't have water and sewer. So now we'll put that under urban reserve. We'll also highlight areas that maybe have a PUD. So going forward, people will know where these areas are. Right now, it's very hard for me to tell you which areas have a PUD, which areas don't. We want to make sure that we're tracking those better. If you have a PUD, you may be able to vary from some of the building design guidelines or the street guidelines or signage, things like that. We want to make sure that everyone's aware that these are in a special district. And we'll also have a new district, which is the public institutional district. And these are areas that are owned by us, by the hospital, public cemeteries, churches, things like that, are now going to go under this public institutional district. So as we were speaking, we are now combining the R3 and the R5 zone. Previously, the R3 zone was to have residential development. It was supposed to be single-family dwellings, single-family attached and detached dwellings. So what that might mean is it could be a small townhome, maybe a two-family townhome, something like that. The R5 district in the past has just been for our manufactured park. We had one area that was R5. We're now going to combine these all into an R3. And so in this district, you may see a few single-family residences, but I would say a majority of them are going to be two-family residences or twin-family residences. And when I say single-family residence, they may be in an association. So they might be a smaller single-family home that has community amenities or a shared yard, things like that. I know that Councilmember Krugman had said, you know, a 50-foot lot seems really small, but if you're in an area that has an association with a shared yard, that might be where something like that could go. Kind of they have them in other towns, they consider them a detached townhome. So basically they have an association, but they're not attached to another building. And then as a conditional use, it will be a manufactured home park. Does anyone have any questions about the combining of those two zones? The next one that will be combined is the splitting of the commercial and industrial zone. In the past, we had a zone called CI, and I'm going to tell you, it looks like we threw everything, including the kitchen sink, in that zone. It had restaurants, sporting goods, transportation, freight terminals, wholesale businesses, retail establishment, personal services, professional services, repair, finance, real estate, plumbing, electrical, motor vehicle repair with no outside storage, manufacturing, and wholesaling. That's a lot of different businesses kind of thrown into one. What we're proposing with our new zoning code is to split those into two different districts. One of them will be a B2 district and one of them will be an I1 district. When you think of a B2 district, I want you to think of a highway business. So as you're coming into town, think of businesses that you would see along the highway. Those might include daycare centers, funeral homes, commercial recreational facilities, and with a conditional use, auto sales, building materials, animal hospitals, breweries, things like that that you would see. And anything really allowed in the B1 could go in this B2 district. It's just the highway type businesses that you see. Then we're going to create an I1 zone. So the purpose of the I1 zone is if you're going to do light industrial, but you're basically not going to have that external storage. That's a good way to describe that light industrial. So if you're warehousing, a wholesale business, a commercial daycare, an art studio, distillery, a brewery, a grain elevator, motor vehicle repairs, any type of appliance, I think I put application, but appliance sales and repair, things like that, those will be in most of that happens in the inside of a business. That would be a light industrial. If you had a heavy industrial, that's where there's going to be a lot of outside storage. So that would be the difference between the two. So we're breaking these up a little bit and trying to have, if you're on the highway, it looks more like a highway business. Hopefully that makes sense to you. One thing that we are changing is our accessory structures. So an accessory structure is your garage. It doesn't matter if it's attached or detached. Basically, your accessory structure is an accessory to your principal use. Your principal use would be your home. Your accessory structure would be your garage. Currently, in the different zones that we have, it breaks it down. In R1 and R2, the maximum is 1,500. In RR, it does let you go up to 4,000 square feet, but you have to get a conditional use permit. In the remaining zones that we currently have, R2 through R5, it's 1,000 square feet. And I think in the past, this would be plenty of garage for a lot of people. But in today's day, it seems like everybody has at least 3 vehicles. They have a snowmobile, they have a motorcycle, they want to have extra toys. And so this is probably the most complained about thing that we have in town right now is these accessory structures. People want to build bigger accessory structures. So what we're proposing is that you can exceed 1,000 square feet if your principal structure has more than 1,000 square feet. So you can't build a massive garage in a tiny house. That isn't what we want. But if you have a 1,200 square foot house, your main area of your house is 1,200 square feet, then you could have a 1,200 square foot garage. We're saying it could be compatible. If you, then beyond that, if you wanna have an additional 200 square feet as like a storage shed in your backyard, we're gonna allow that. We're trying to still make it be that, as I said, that you can't have this massive shed with just a really small house in town. If you wanna do something like that, that should be more in the township or in the country. That isn't really the purpose of in town. Especially with the rate of putting in water and sewer, we wanna make sure that we're getting the most homes that we can. We are changing one thing though, which I think people will be happy about, is if you have between 1 acre but less than 2 acres, we're gonna allow you to have up to 2,000 square feet. If you have 2 acres but less than 3 acres, we're gonna allow you to have 3,000 square feet. And 3+ acres would be the 4,000 without having to come in for a conditional use. If you have a 4 acre plus lot, you know, I'm hoping that you'll approve that we're gonna allow them to have up to 4,000 square feet. We were issuing quite a few CUPs for this, and really if you're issuing a lot of CUPs, you might wanna consider just letting them do that. That's the benefit of them buying a 3+ acre lot.
Regarding the dwelling size, correct?
Right, yep.
So they could have a 1,200, but they'd still build a 4,000.
Yep, if they have a big enough,
3+.
yeah. You know what, that's a good question, Mayor. I'm gonna have to ask Nate to confirm that. So you're saying again that they couldn't build this. I guess that's something, you know, maybe we would let them, but I'm glad you've asked that, and we'll make sure that we clarify that by the second reading. Because I wanna make sure, it says on residential lots greater than 1 acre, an additional 1,000 square feet may be permitted for each acre up to 4,000. So that's basically how it reads to me, is that we would let you do that, but let me double check that. Yeah.
So administrator approval?
One thing I want to add is this would completely remove the CUP process for accessory structures. This would be very statically defined in the code. So you wouldn't see a planning commission wouldn't see a CUP for somebody wanting to build something that's above this. It just would not be allowed in the code, except if you have a larger lot.
Councilmember Sullivan?
Sam, can I get you to back up one slide? I actually have a question from the previous slide.
Yeah.
How does this affect our current businesses if we're changing zones for their businesses?
So what we've done actually is gone through making sure that the businesses that we have fit the uses. So we haven't changed anyone or made them so they're non-conforming. Everybody should conform now, which actually makes sense because they should have been zoned this previously.
Just want to make sure. Thank you.
Let me ask that question another way. With our current businesses right now, is there any need for any variances with the way we've changed the zoning?
No, we wouldn't affect any of them in a negative way.
Perfect.
I think it would actually make it better. For instance, I'm trying to think of some of the businesses that we have. You know, some of the businesses I would say that we have some operating that are in the industrial zone right now that should be in a highway business zone. So this will actually make their lives better. They shouldn't have been zoned industrial to begin with. There's some zoning that I'm not quite sure why it ended up the way that it did, but this is gonna clean up quite a few things. And I've gone through and looked at each one of them.
The reason I asked that question is I just want to make sure that current businesses in town, like if they were going to sell, that they weren't going to,
Yeah.
once they sold hands that or changed hands, that it wasn't going to shut that business down.
Yeah, no, they should be fine. I
Thank
think,
you.
like I said, I think they'll actually be better off than they are now.
Perfect.
I'm gonna temporarily assume the chair role. Mayor, excuse himself temporarily. Sam, I have a question for you.
Yes, sir.
On the size of accessory structures where it can go up to 4,000 square feet, would you make it sort of clear for us what that means in terms of, are we talking only about residential property or all property first?
So this would just be for our residential districts. Yep, our industrial zones and our business zones, they follow different requirements as far as their accessory structures, what they can bring in. Their accessory structures have to be they have to match their principal use of that zone. So if they're a certain type of business, they have to bring in a structure that's gonna go along with that. They can't start a completely different business and try to operate out of there. It has to be as part of the same business.
Sam, focusing back on the residential with a very large structure, let's go to 4,000 square feet. Because it's in a residential area, it looks like it may become commercial when it's that size. But commercial business would be prohibited. It's a residential area, to be clear.
Exactly, yep, and I'm very watchful of that. I have some
Understand.
people currently building quite large accessory structures, and I will be watching them to make sure that there's no commercial businesses being operated out of those. Thank you for asking that, sir.
Please continue.
And one of my favorite
Is there a
topics.
question? I'm sorry.
Yeah. One question. So this is a good conversation to have, is about home occupancy. So if somebody wants to have be in a residential district and occupy their home as a business, we have a permit process for that if they choose to. I'm not sure, that might be a question, is if somebody wants to have let's say a 3-acre lot, a 4,000 square foot accessory structure, then apply for a home occupancy permit, they could do that.
It depends on the type of business that they are operating. There are some businesses that we do not allow to be done in any of our residential districts. So for instance, you cannot open up an auto repair shop out of your home garage. It doesn't matter what district you're in, that is not an allowed use, because you probably don't have the type of setup that you need as far as, in our commercial districts. I would say we're a little bit more watchful of how they're connected to water and sewer, and they're making sure that they're cleaning up their materials properly. In an area like that, in a housing area, I wouldn't have any control over that, and that would be a concern of mine, and for your neighbors, right? I would want to make sure that you're not doing something that affects their enjoyment of their property because of the type of business that you're running. I think that's why people set up the home occupancy permits to begin with, is if you have people coming and going, a lot of people don't enjoy that. And my favorite topic, fences. I will tell you, this is a challenge for me, is our fences. And I think one of the biggest struggles that we have is exactly where people are going to be allowed to put their fences. In the past, you had to be at least 5 feet from your rear property line and 18 inches from any side property lines. The new code has taken away the 5 feet from the back property line. It does say 18 inches. But I want to make sure that people are very aware and that they come in and that they get a fence permit. Because what has happened just this week, I had someone decide to put up a fence and they put it in a utility easement. And he said to me, "It's okay, I was at least 14 inches from that gas main." And I thought, how do you know that? You don't know that. It is buried underground. You could hit it. You cannot build something like that in a utility easement. So he now is moving his fence. But unfortunately, people don't want to check the regulations. They think they can just put up a fence wherever they want. And I can tell you, I get neighbor complaints all the time. I'm inspecting fences all the time. I am always reminding people to find their pins. Don't just throw up your fence. Don't assume you know where your property line is. You don't. And so I am a little bit nervous about taking away the 5 feet from the rear, but really that is a big chunk of land. If you don't have a utility easement, it makes you wonder, why do you have the 5 feet? But it will be 18 inches all the way around. This is what the Planning Commission had asked, and I believe it has to do with, making sure that there's that strip. This is something you could change if you want it to, right on the property line. Find the property line, put it up just on your side. That's something that council could make that change. But I would be very leery of that, because I'm afraid that people could be moving pins, and all of a sudden we have a new surveyor come and they find out that pin was moved or tampered with somehow. I think having that 18-inch buffer is necessary, but it's up to you. If you wanted to make it right on the property line, that's something you could do as well.
City Administrator approval.
So as Sam alluded to, fences are quite exciting for city staff, and there's 100 ways to approach it. And the one thing that I think Sam and I really agree on is that, I don't know if it's appropriate to put it in the code, but we need to have some way to make sure that when you're putting a fence in, you're getting a survey done of your property by a licensed surveyor, because Justin Nielsen, the building official, deals with this all the time. Sam deals with it. People think they know where their property line is and put in a fence, and they'll draw something on a piece of paper and bring it in. And you think, yeah, this kind of matches up on Beacon, but do I really trust Beacon to this extent? It's difficult, and it creates challenges not only right now but in the future, for when there's property sales, houses sell, somebody comes in and they actually get a survey done, and then all of a sudden somebody's fence is on their property. It's a definite challenge, and it's something that all communities deal with, especially communities that have we have an old town plat, so it's an old area. The original area that was platted by the settlers of the Sueur, it's not platted actually. It's all legal descriptions. all other areas, subdivisions are all platted, so it's a little bit easier in that sense to know where they are. But you could get somebody tampering with property pins. You know, you can buy property pins online, and you can buy a metal detector and find where they are and pull them out and move them around. And you know, so really it's important to get a survey done, regardless if it's on the property line or 18 inches off the property line, just to know where that property line is and verify. It's an additional expense if you want to put up a fence. It's, you know, anywhere from $250 to $500. And surveyors are not plentiful in the area either, so you might have a wait. You know, you might say, I'm going to put up a fence this weekend and order a bunch of stuff from Menards, and then try to get a permit thinking you're going to get it, but you need a survey, which might take you a month to get a surveyor out there. So there's some definite challenges with this. The 18 inches from where you think the property line is pretty close. I mean, it gives us a little bit of wiggle room, but if you have a neighborhood that has a series of fences where everybody has a fence, then you have these 36-inch strips between each property or each house, and then you know somebody has to mow that, and it becomes kind of a mess. In platted areas, it's easy to say, well, you know, you put it on the property line and you get consent from your neighbor, and you can record that consent, and then that travels with the property. But it's a challenge. If it's something that you would want us to come up with, I think what staff would ultimately recommend, we could come up with something. This is something that we went to the planning commission, and because it was something that was so recently kind of adopted, we left it with the idea that city council, if they choose, could change it up. We are changing the back lot, but in general, they're challenging, and there's ways around it. But ultimately, we need a survey for these types of things.
And I think just going off what Jasper said, I'm afraid that could be cheap. Like, to get a surveyor is probably closer to $1,000 right now. They are so busy. People call me all the time trying to track down a surveyor. If someone wants to start a business, that would be an amazing business to open up in Sueur, because we have to go to Sibley County, we have to go to Bolton and Mink. We don't have any local surveyors, and that is extremely challenging for the residents. And I know that's why they've been renting, they've actually been renting metal detectors and looking for the pins themselves. And the hardware store in St. Peter rents out metal detectors, and I can't tell you how many people have found their pins themselves, and I go out and verify that they found their pins. And that seems to be a good method so far. And then, as Jasper said, then they're going 18 inches from there. But I know sometimes I've looked at some of these pins and I'm thinking, I wonder if that's really right. You know, I don't know. But I think that's the thing, is I just don't know that our residents have that kind of money, you know, to invest. Putting up a fence itself is an expensive thing to do. So I think that's where the 18 inches came from. But I don't know if it's the best answer. I agree with Jasper. I wish everybody would get a survey, then we'd know where everybody's pins were, and you would know as a property owner. But I've had some people that have said, I've lived here 43 years, and I'm sure it's that hedge. You know, I mean, it's hard. So I'm not sure if there is a perfect answer, but this is what we've been using, and I think I have a little bit more of a comfort level with that, but I don't know.
It is a criminal act to go ahead and tamper with property pins, is it not?
I would think it would be.
And what is the penalty? So maybe.
Well, I think you'd have to prove that, and that's the hard thing with some of these neighbors. Some of these neighbor disputes that start is, you know, as soon as they start disputing the fence. I've had one neighbor who put it up, and he was supposed to go 18 inches. He didn't follow it. He put it right on the property line. The neighbor got mad, and so then it turned into a legal matter that really, because I needed proof that he didn't put it where he was supposed to, and the neighbor didn't want to pay for a survey, and it just, you know, it turns into a horrible issue between neighbors. And that's where I'm thinking to myself, at least if he would have gone over the 18 inches, I think the neighbor would have felt a little bit better. I know, as Jasper said, it does create a mowing mess, but, you know, for that one neighbor, they were very, very upset that they truly think that he put it on their property line. And that wasn't what our code says. So I could write a book about fences. That might be my next thing in life. But those are just some of the things that we did change in the code. And as Jasper said, we had asked that you waive the first reading tonight. Newell did make some really good changes, and I got responses from our consultants on those. And some of the things that we've learned is we often get our training from people who come from the Twin Cities Metro. And as I was explaining earlier tonight, unfortunately, rules that apply in the Metro sometimes don't apply in non-metro areas. And so our consultant fill me in on some of those things tonight, especially in areas that have the Met Council. They have different rules than we do. We don't have to follow Met Council rules, and that changes a lot of things for us, but I think that overall, I'm really proud of the work that we've done on the zoning code update. I think it makes sense, and there's just a few things that we do need to tweak, and I appreciate your comments on that. And I look forward to getting those all wrapped up by the 26th.
Let me ask this. Every 3 years, the properties within the sewer are inspected, mandated by the state of Minnesota, correct?
I think you're speaking about rental properties.
All properties, for property taxes.
Yeah, if I may. So yeah, property taxes, when they reappraise their property, the county comes in, I think every 3 years they're required to.
So in essence, a third of our properties are looked at each year. My question would be, and I don't know, I think I've asked this before, but I don't know if we really got a good answer on it. Is there some way to work with the county on a year-to-year basis to determine what properties looked like 3 years ago when that property was looked at as opposed to now, so that we can determine whether or not there has been violations of fences or buildings or anything of that nature?
That's actually what I do often, is I can go back, and so in Beacon, our GIS system, we have different photos taken from different times. So the photo we're using right now is our 2017 photo. I believe there's a 2013 photo in there, Jasper, and they go back years before that. So it's very easy for me to pinpoint. I will say the pictures taken today are much more accurate and much clearer than the previous pictures that we had. So that's only gonna get better as time goes on. But, you know, as far as people doing stuff that they're not supposed to, I think people are shocked at how many of their neighbors will turn them in. You know, people want to make sure that you're doing what you're supposed to do. If they want to follow the rules, they want to make sure that you're following the rules. So a majority of the issues that we've come across have been from neighbor complaints. And that then makes me go out there. But one thing that we've talked about adding, especially with fences or sheds, things like that, is in PIMS, our software where we track our permits, we can actually add an inspection. And that's basically what Justin and I have determined that we're gonna do, is as part of the shed permit or the fence permit, to add an inspection where I'm gonna come out, I wanna see the post holes before you do it, I wanna see your pins before you actually go forward with the installation. And I think that will cut back on some of the issues, but I can never stop the people who do stuff without a permit.
So to be clear, at some point, we don't know exactly when, but at some point, if you've done something without a building permit, you're gonna get caught. It's just a matter of time. So now that said, for those that have done buildings of fences or outbuildings or decks, whatever it may be, what is the policy that maybe these people can now come back to the city and say, oh yeah, I screwed up, I built a deck a couple of years ago, I knew I shouldn't have, but is there a penalty, is there a fine that they pay, do they have to pay for the building permit? What's the process for that?
Typically, they're charged an administration fee, and that increases their permit costs. So if there's extra time that goes into it, if Justin and I have to go back through and figure some of this stuff out, there is an administrative fee that is charged, because that's above and beyond our time. But I think the one thing I want people to remember is we're not doing these inspections just because we want to pick on people or we have nothing to do. We want to make sure that they're done properly and that people are safe. And when someone puts up a deck, they think that they know what they're doing, and they can very easily build it so it's not a safe structure. They can haul in a shed and use it for a purpose that's not allowed to be, again, you're creating something that's not a safe structure. That's what we're here for, is to make sure that, well, you have it now, and if you sell it in the future, that this has been done the right way. And I appreciate that Justin goes out and looks at water heaters, and he looks at everything that gets installed, because I would love to say that every contractor out there does a great job, or every homeowner does a great job. But unfortunately, we aren't aware of what code is and what is safe and what's not safe. And that's what Justin's role is and what my role is. And really, I want to make something that is enjoyable to you now, but also in the future. People always say, well, this is my property, I'm not going to sell it. At some point, you're going to sell that property. And then it can cause issues beyond that. And we don't want that to happen. We want to make sure that you have enjoyment to use it, but also for years to come. And I think that's important that people know. That's why we have these rules and regulations, is we really want to make sure that you can enjoy this property.
So may I have another question?
That's another problem.
Sam and others, as I went through this multiple page document, and that's a polite way to put it, multiple pages, it was a lot. I kept struggling with, do I use the word ordinance or code? I noticed the action we're being asked to take is to adopt a zoning code. But there are really two ordinances here. One is a zoning ordinance and the other is a subdivision ordinance. When we use the term zoning code, do we mean both the zoning ordinance and the subdivision ordinance?
Yes, sir.
I want to have clarity for everybody.
Thank you for asking that.
Yeah.
And that was important that we had both of them updated. They really speak to each other and discuss the processes of how the other works. So you have to do them both at the same time.
If we make a motion with zoning code is the word, we understand that it includes both the zoning and the subdivision ordinances.
I believe they're chapters 152 and 153. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm looking for a motion to waive the first reading of the zoning code, which includes the zoning ordinance and the subdivision ordinance. Update and scheduling the second reading for August 26th, 2019.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any additional discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion is carried. We now move on to item 8 Echo, which is the 2019 TAP Sidewalk Project Bid Award. City Administrator approval.
Mayor Hague, members of the City Council, before you is a project that's been, that was started well before I even got here at the City of Sueur. So this was a grant that was awarded back in 2015 for MnDOT fiscal year 2019. So here we are, MnDOT fiscal year 2019, and we went out for bids for this project. So a little bit of information about this project. It's 31 blocks of sidewalk replacement in the City of Sueur. You might ask, why is the county involved? There's a couple reasons. Part of the project on county roads, so that's one of the reasons. The main reason is, in order to access these funds, because we're a city under 5,000 people, we actually need the county to act as our fiscal agent. And that's because these are federal funds and this is a federal program. So basically, it's twofold. The county's required to, in order for us to access these TAP, which stands for Transportation Alternative Program, which is a federal program. In order for us to access those dollars, the county actually has to act as the fiscal agent. So that's the question about the county. The project itself had an engineer's estimate of just under $876,000 over the years, and as we've refined these things, that number has crept up, and as you'll see in the final numbers, MnDOT has also crept up their amount that they're contributing as well. So bids were opened on July 30th, 2019. We received one bid from Tyzak Concrete Incorporated, and they're out of Lee Center, Minnesota. The total bid amount that we received was $1,071,543.95. This was substantially over the engineer's estimate, as you can see. Through that process, we requested some additional funds from MnDOT, from their State Transportation Improvement Project Fund. They have indicated that they will match a full 80% of the project, which is roughly an additional $320,000 from their original amount. If you remember back to 2017, there was an additional $105,000 that was added to the project through the STIP project fund, and they're throwing in another $320 because of the amount of that the bid came in. So, total breaking down what this actually is going to cost, and I'll try to be clear about the different kind of buckets we have money that are going into. But really tonight we're talking about awarding the bid, but I thought it's important to understand the full project cost of this for the City of Sueur, the county, and the state of Minnesota. So with the additional funds, the MnDOT is allocating, they're at $857,235.16 out of the $1.07 million bid. The city of Sueur, their portion would be $158,860.18, and Sueur County would be $55,448.61. Now these dollar amounts were negotiated based on the amount of project area for county road versus city roads, and those numbers were developed during the process when the grant was applied for. So as these numbers have increased, our numbers have increased as well as far as our contribution goes. But what we have going on here is that we've also known that, and we budgeted more each year. This project, we get closer and closer to that. So here is the area of the sidewalk project. As you can see, it's on the north end. It's 4th Street at the school entrance. You'll see there, and then it kind of goes into 4th and 5th Streets throughout the city. So it's 31 total blocks of project or sidewalk project, and it's replacement only. We have no areas that we're putting new sidewalk in at this time. If you remember, there were some areas, I think a couple residents were going to get new sidewalks with this. We pulled those off the project just so that we could secure easements for the project and continue on. If we want to look at those in the future as a city council, we can. So there are some additional costs to this. So there's always engineering costs, and then there's some construction administration. So the design engineering for this project, as you can see, and these aren't STIP fund or TAP fund eligible. These are all City of Sueur or Sueur County. And you can look at the percentage breakdowns for those. The total for design engineering is going to be, and this is actually done, so we know this is a final number, $234,470.10. You can see the breakdown between the City of Sueur and Sueur County. Construction administration, now this is something that will happen in the future. What this entails is inspections of the sidewalks, making sure that the contractor, when they submit their estimates or their pay requests, that goes through the construction administrator. That'll be Bolton & Bank for this project, and you can look at what the breakdown between the two entities are for that. Total project cost, so overall everything that we have potentially into the project, if this bid is awarded tonight, MnDOT STIP funds, also TAP, we're kind of grouping those together. They're two different funds, but they're all funneling through MnDOT, is at $857,235.16. The City of Sueur is at $381,306.47, and Sueur County is at $133,201.42. So as you can see, pretty substantial investments from both the City of Sueur and Sueur County for this project. Now this is a big project. You might think, well, we're just replacing sidewalks. 31 blocks of sidewalk is a pretty enormous project, so it's a large undertaking. The preliminary timeline, if approved tonight, construction would start sometime after Labor Day and have substantial completion by November 1st. That was the bidding guidelines. So substantial completion means they'll probably have all the sidewalks formed poured. The only thing that'll probably be left is just making sure that the turf has been established. So all the ped ramps will be done, all the truncated domes and grades and things like that will be completed on the sidewalks. So if approved tonight, we have a plan in place that once we get a substantial or more formal construction schedule, we're going to do some door hangers, because we've talked to people on the corridor numerous times to get through some meetings and to get easements. So they know the project's coming, but we've started getting some questions. Well, when's it going to start? So we were going to do some door hangers and probably set up a little open house to kind of get some information out about that between now and when the project will actually start, which is pretty soon. So what we're looking for tonight, if there's any questions, feel free, but we're looking for a motion to award the bid totaling $1,071,543.95 for the 2019 TAP sidewalk project to Tyzac Concrete Incorporated. As a note, this went to the county board on August 6th as well. They approved their portion of the project, contingent on the City of Sueur approving it as well. So with that, I'll entertain any questions.
To be clear, what exactly is the definition of the sidewalk project? Is it just the sidewalks? Does it include the aprons for driveways? Does it include curb and gutter? Just for the benefit
Yeah.
of everybody, maybe we can talk about this.
Yep, so it includes the sidewalks, it includes aprons, so gutter aprons leading up into the driveway. So if you're on the project, you will get a new concrete apron. There is some spot curb repair that will be occurring. Most of the intersections that you see in the project will receive some pretty substantial rehabilitation. As many are aware, that area, the roads are very poor. So what we've done is we put some intersection improvements in there, justifying that, well, we're improving the sidewalk so people can get around, but when they cross the street, they're gonna have issues because there's potholes and cracks and all that stuff. So we're also doing the intersections as well. So sidewalks, aprons, some curb, and then most of the intersections are gonna get some improvements.
Intersections, is it something like ADA compliant, or how would you phrase it?
Yeah, I would say make them ADA compliant. Basically, anything over a 1-inch lip is considered not ADA compliant. There's a lot of areas that we've had some, crack sealing and crack repair that's been done, and that stuff gives away every few years. So those intersections will be safe and accessible for people to cross.
Councilmember Sullivan?
Jasper, can you just clarify how the bid was put out and when that happened?
Yeah.
That process?
Yep. So we followed the Minnesota state statutes as far as the requirements for the bid. We put that out 21 days prior to the bid opening, so whatever that is, early July, and then also we published that in the paper twice. So it was in there in the paper twice as far as the bids. We also reached out to some local contractors that requested, well, hey, when this project hits, let us know. So we let them know. It's a tough year, and that's why I think the bids came in kind of higher than what expected. We had a really wet spring. I think people that have work are really struggling to get that work done in time. So the bidding pool, I think there were 8 plan holders that could have been general contractors. We got one bid. So it's not ideal, but if so, in a different scenario, let's say MnDOT wouldn't have stepped up and contributed more, we probably would have said, let's reject these bids and see what our options are. But I think it's a good thing too that it's a semi-local contractor that got it. It's not somebody from out of state or something like that.
Did we put out the bid notice, or was that done at the county level, or both?
So it was out of the county level. So and then Boltman Mink facilitated that project. Yeah, or that. Yep. So yeah, in general, this is considered for all intents and purposes a county project. So everything's been funneled through the county. Bid opening was at the county. So it's just most of the project is our project.
Thank you.
Yep.
So what exactly would happen if we did not do this project in 2019? We would sacrifice that TAP money because this is MnDOT money, correct?
Correct, and so there's a couple of moving targets here. That STIP money or that MnDOT money would run out. We wouldn't have that. We would also not have the temporary easements for the sidewalk construction. So we've got these easements signed. They expire in 2019. So we would have to get all new temporary easements. The permanent easements are fine, they're permanent, but the temporaries would run out. We'd have to get additional.
And we'd also lose county funding as well.
Maybe.
And we'd probably also lose the additional monies that both MnDOT and the county were willing to go ahead and ante up because the bid came in higher than the engineers' thought process.
I could speak for MnDOT because I know those dollars expire. The county, I don't know. Potentially, yes.
Anybody else have any questions or concerns? That said, I'll look for a motion to award the bid totaling $1,071,543.95 for the 2019 TAP sidewalk project to Zytac Concrete Incorporated, located in the center of Minnesota.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any additional discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion is carried. We now move on to line item 8, Foxtrot, which is the Animal Control Services Contract. City Administrator approval.
Mayor Hague, members of City Council. Before you is a continuation of our animal control services contract that we have with Critter Getter Incorporated out of Henderson. They were in here recently and fielded some questions from City Council about what they do and how their operation works. We currently have a contract with Critter Getter that goes through the end of 2019. This would be renewing that contract. The new contract would go through 2022. The terms are the same as the existing contract. We pay $1,200 a month. They provide a whole plethora of services. There's basically anything going on city property, we call them up, they come in and take care of it. It is also a service for the residents. Let's say you have a skunk living in your grill, which is a call that we've recently fielded. They can actually call up Critter Getter and they'll come into the community and help them out for a charge. But it's something, they're in the community, they know it. It's an available resource, but they're here, multiple times a month, taking care of stray animals and dogs. And as you heard, one thing that they do and they pride themselves on is that the animals that they do capture, that they're very proud that they don't euthanize those animals either. So they try to find a good home for them. They try to find the original owner first of all, but then they work with the Humane Society of Scott County to find a good home for those animals. So what we're looking for, there's a resolution that's included in the packet, Resolution R 2019-020, Agreement for Animal Control Services. What we're looking for is a motion to approve that resolution. If there's any questions, I can field those.
On our 5 Bravo, our council approval, the disbursements for this period, this last period we had $1,174 for Critter Getter. Yet the contract is for $1,200. What's the reason why?
Yeah, that's a good question. So when somebody comes back and picks up their animal that Critter Getter picks up, they actually pay the $26 fee to get that animal back. And what they do is then they take that off of our monthly bill. So if somebody actually comes, shows up, picks up their animal, they have to pay for the animal, and then we get that off of our monthly bill. It's always $1,200. That's the max it'll ever be. You can only go down from there, depending on if people are picking up their animals.
Councilmember Sullivan.
Have we solicited for other services, or are they the only one around?
That's another good question. They're really the only one around. There's actually a consortium of cities in this area that all use Critter Getter. Back in 2018, there was a memo of understanding between, I believe, Belle Plaine, Jordan, Scott County, the city of Sueur, maybe a couple other entities.
It's recited in this.
Is it? Okay. And then the Scott, I believe the Scott County Humane Society oversees their operations. So they're really the only game in town as far as this type of service goes. So we haven't solicited for it, but we're happy with the service they provide, and they really are the only vendor around.
Any other questions? Looking for a motion to enter into this agreement with Critter Getter for animal control services through the year 2022.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any additional discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion is carried. We're now going to go through our comments, reports, and items of appreciation. City Council members that attend meetings will have notes regarding the meeting pertinent to the general public interest associated with said meeting. Being prepared will help expedite the comment period. Preparation for this item is appreciated. That said, we will start with Councilmember Huntington tonight.
Oh. Actually, I can't think of, other than a bird monkey.
We've had 3 weeks since our last meeting.
Oh, you didn't go in? Did we have one? Can't remember if it was bird fuck or not. Since the last meeting. Did we?
Yeah, we did. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Time's going so fast.
And yeah, we discussed the rates with the rate study that Baker Tilly provided, getting some more information on that, and then basically get the budget process rolling.
Okay, thank you, Jasper.
I'll need that.
There we go.
Anything-
There's my report.
Anything else, Councilman?
No, I got nothing else.
Councilmember Sullivan.
Nothing really to report. We did have that MERPA meeting. We did increase the rates again for 2 more months, so I would look at the Baker Tilly report, figure out what we're gonna do moving forward once we see some other numbers. I would like to thank our giant committee for a great Giant Days event and all the city staff that helped put that on, all the volunteers.
Councilmember Cronin.
Three areas very quickly. MMPA, Minnesota Municipal Power Agency, our wholesale electrical provider. We're one of the 12 member cities. The annual meeting was held a couple of weeks ago, the day after our last council meeting. Some of our staff and Mayor and I both attended, as did Councilmember Roloff. We have a report from that. Jasper, we have some extra copies upstairs, correct?
Correct, we do. I intended to put it in your packets the last time, but they didn't make them in there, but we'll get them out next time. They are available at the front desk for the public, anybody to
Yeah,
look
there
at.
are some extra copies for the public if they want them. I did present our resolution concerning the relocation of the turbine and an alternate having solar here in town. That's under consideration by the MMPA. I can pretty much tell you that turbine's not going to be relocated into town here. That's very clear. Whether it will go to another community is yet for them to decide. And what will happen with solar is also up in the air. One of the things I mentioned when the zoning code was looked at today, in my memo I indicated we have to be careful if we're going to locate a solar facility in town that we're permitted to do so. If we're going to have a non-residential or right on top of the business type of a thing. If you're doing it to put into the grid, there's certain requirements. So that'll be looked at by our consultant. I also attended that same week, a couple of weeks ago, the Coalition of Greater Minnesota Cities meeting, the summer meeting up in Bemidji. I'm only going to mention a couple of things here. The main one is this, and I guess there's two within this. We need to be very persistent and be always in communication with our legislators from the state. If we don't, things won't happen the way we want them to happen. So it's important that we develop those relationships. So as a council, if we have someone, senator, representative coming to town or a governor's representative, we need to be there face to face with them because the indication is that makes a difference. And the examples of that are LGA, which did get increased this year. A lot of our council members were in contact with our legislators, and throughout the state, members of the coalition were clearly doing that. The second one was that we need to be very persistent about getting funding for streets and roads. And that's a good example of one where we can work with our legislators. We didn't do as well last time, but we need to do so in the future. Last thing, with regard to the coalition meeting, I'm going to be speaking with some school officials here. I'll probably ask Jasper to join me or someone else from the staff just for information purposes. But the city of Bemidji and their educational system through the school district has a thing called a career academy. And what it means basically is this: as part of their educational process, they partner with businesses in town to have an educational component for students who might sign up to work or to be involved with the work at, let's say, a lumber mill or at another business in town. It fits well with our comp plan when we talk about partnerships. So I will be giving information to the school district. It's theirs to do with as they please, but it fits well with our partnership under the comp plan. They have a very sophisticated system. They're doing 6 businesses, adding 6 businesses every year. I think they're up to 18 if I recall right now. Very successful program. What we're learning is in the modern world, not everybody needs to go to college or even junior college. Maybe we used to call a trade school or a tech school would be appropriate. There are very good employment opportunities with good careers for people, and there's a need for them. So this is a way that our being part of the coalition, I can at least bring this information back. So, that's my report.
Thank you very much, and I really appreciate that information regarding everything associated with the LGMC, or the CGMC meeting in Bemidji. That was very informative information. Thank you, and I look forward to what you were able to glean with the school district in regards to what their thoughts are. Councilmember Kirby.
Real brief, since our last meeting, I haven't had any other meetings with the hospital board or EDA. That'll be coming up towards the end of the month. Community Ed met for the first time August 6th. That was an interesting meeting, and I haven't met with them since I've been on the council yet, and we spent a good part of the night redefining the educational and recreational programs here in town, just kind of trying to sit through that on what roles those programs are going to take in community ed. So it was a good meeting, and plus I got to know the other board members a little bit, so I'm looking forward to meeting with them in the future also. And that was the same night as the community night out. I know a lot of you participated in that, and that was a pretty successful evening too, I thought. So I did catch a little bit of that after my community ed meeting. So other than that, I don't have anything else.
Okay, thank you. Director Lawrence, anything?
Nope.
City Administrator approval?
Yeah. Sorry. Briefly, I have a few things. Right now, we're currently in the middle of water meter replacements. So please check out all the materials that we have out there on the website, Facebook. Call us up to get out there and schedule a water meter replacement. I think we're just under 20% done for the community as far as what we have to do. So it's got a good start, but we definitely need to get people to sign up that haven't already. We're in the middle. We just started the utility billing software upgrade, we'll call it, process, or new utility billing software that was approved. NISC was in all of last week with staff, and Finance Director Dowd and Sally Durner, the utility billing coordinator, spent the whole week with 3 individuals that came here. 2 were from North Dakota, 1 was from, I believe, Kansas. So they came in and started laying the groundwork, kind of the backbone for our new software that we're going to have. So we're really excited about that, but it's just, I want it here now. It's going to be February. So I just have to learn to be patient. So we are going through the budget process on the 26th. The full city council will see what personnel and budget's been working on. There aren't many major changes that we have going on. It's kind of status quo from the last 3 years that we've done the budget process. But we want to make sure that the full council's on board with what the kind of general plans are for the prelim, and then we'll try to get the prelim budget or prelim levy passed on September 9th. What that is, for just a reminder, we pass a preliminary budget every year. We have to do so by the end of September. That just gives the county some numbers to put on your prelim tax statement that you receive in the mail. And what we can do is, generally that number's high. Right now, I think we're just under 10%, right around 10% is what we're saying. But then we always get that number down as we generally get some numbers in from our insurance companies and things like that. We can kind of bring that number back down to where we think it will likely be, and that number will probably be between 4 and 6%. Generally, what we have done in the past. And just as a note, right now the prelim estimated market values for the city, on average, are up 13.3%, which is pretty high. So you probably have gotten a tax statement, and you think, well, geez, my house really went up in value. That doesn't necessarily mean that your taxes are going to go up that same amount. So your taxes probably, from the city standpoint, right now they won't go up the same amount. So your tax rate will likely decrease or will decrease. And then the last thing, we've started the park planning process that we had. WSB was in the park for the Giant celebration on that Saturday where we had the 5K run. They were gathering information from people. They got a lot of good information. A lot of people stopped by their booth that they had. They were there for about 4 hours and basically had a board that you could put a star on a bunch of different areas of parks that you thought were important for the city of Sueur. So, I went by there a couple times, and the people kept on throwing stars on the Ninja Warrior course, you know, probably because they see it on TV or whatever. But it's kind of cool. There's communities that have them, and they're very neat. So that process is going strong. You'll likely see something on our website and Facebook about a link that you can click and then go on a map and then put a little comment about parks on there, and that's another way that they're gonna gather some information. There's gonna be another physical event they go to. We don't know when that's gonna be yet, and do another booth. So that process has started, and you'll likely get the results of that by December is what the timeline is. That's it.
Thank you.
Mayor,
Councilmember Sullivan?
Jasper, can you just touch on our conversation earlier today about what people may see when they do their meter replacement?
Yes. So, Councilmember Sullivan called up, said he got his utility bill. There were only 16 days on that billing cycle. I think his is unique. We've talked about this internally. His is unique, and maybe the people that have gotten their meter swapped out at the same time will be unique. We're going to reach out to each of those individuals. There's a handful of them, and let them know, hey, this is an anomaly. You know, your bill isn't going to be half of what it normally is. But the next month you might see a 40, like this one you maybe have 16 days on your billing cycle. The next one you might have 45 days. So your bill might be higher, and we're going to try to get the information out to those people so that they can budget and plan accordingly for that. So, and what that is just basically the meter swapped out, and on the current bill, the past usage was the only thing on there. Moving forward, it will be the new meter and the new meter usage. So, and that starts at 0, I believe, and then you can keep going. As far as the portal goes, that was another question that came up. The census portal, so the meters that you can go in and look at your usage. Right now, the collection nodes are being installed next week. So once those are installed and the system is live, it'll probably be about 4 weeks before you can actually get on the portal and look at your information, because the infrastructure that collects the data in real time isn't even installed yet. So we're working on that. We've had to do some infrastructure stuff with our fiber network as well, to get that to the water tower and things like that. So it's all happening. It's a pretty busy time behind the scenes for public services, definitely.
And I'd like to also do a shout out to the Giant Celebration Committee for all the hard work that they did putting on another wonderful celebration for our community. And secondly, I'd like to thank all the city employees for all the hard work that they did preparing, also maintaining everything while the celebration was going on, and also taking care of all the tear downs and things of that nature. So thank you to everybody involved. And with that said, this meeting of the Sueur City Council will now be closed as permitted by Minnesota Statute 13-Delta.05 Subdivision 3 to discuss real property related to the negotiations of the dissolution of the Minnesota River Valley Public Utilities Commission. This meeting will be recorded, and a summary of this meeting will be provided to the public at the next open meeting. And with that said, if I could go ahead and have everybody outside of the City Council, please